Mel Brooks is 98 years old, a man who spent a lifetime turning dictators into punchlines, fear into farce, and darkness into laughter.
The golden age of comedy and famous funny man Mel Brooks.
Yet today, there is no joke, no smile, no charm to cut through the tension. 2 days ago, the cameras caught him outside his home, and the world saw something it has never seen before. Broken, worn, guilt etched into his eyes, a weight pressing him into the ground. Mel Brooks is not just a legend. He was Rob Reiner's godfather, Carl Reiner's closest confidant.
And I have one good friend. I call him my best friend. My life is fuller because I've had Mel in my life. If he doesn't come over, I don't know what to do with myself.
A guardian of a Hollywood dynasty. He changed diapers, offered counsel, watched triumphs and quiet failures that never made the headlines. And now, he is the last one left standing. The final witness to a family and career that collapsed from the inside.
We all got the news that Rob and Michelle Reiner had been murdered in their homes.
What he revealed in his rare confessional interview changes everything we thought we knew about that Brentwood house. This is not the story of a sudden tragedy. This is the story of a slow-motion catastrophe, one that everyone saw coming.
There were indicators that there were problems in the relationship, problems with him.
And no one stopped. Tonight, we pull back the curtain. We go beyond the court dates, beyond the headlines, to the truths that no one else has dared to tell. What really happened? And why did no one intervene before it was too late? The confession. There were no cameras in Mel's living room that afternoon, no bright lights, no production crew hovering in the background, no publicists standing by to filter the message. Just one trusted journalist sitting across from a 98-year-old man, a tape recorder placed on the table between them, and the kind of silence that only forms when someone is about to say something they have been holding inside for far too long. Mel Brooks did not ease into the conversation. He did not start with pleasantries or deflections. He started exactly where it hurt most. He started with guilt. Sitting deep in his armchair, surrounded by decades of memories hanging on the walls, Mel's hands were shaking. Not the tremor of age, something sharper, something closer to anger that had been compressed for so long it no longer knew how to stay still. He admitted right away that he had been carrying this weight in private, turning it over in his mind during the long, quiet hours when the phone does not ring and the house feels too empty to bear. He said he had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, not because he wanted attention, but because silence had started to feel like betrayal. Mel looked up at the journalist, his eyes sharp but wet with tears that had been waiting years to fall. He said, "People keep calling this a tragedy. They call it a sudden break. They call it a shocking accident, something that came out of nowhere and shattered a family overnight." Then his voice dropped, and he said it plainly, without flinching. This was not an accident, and it sure as hell was not sudden.
Nick Reiner, son of Hollywood icon Rob Reiner, has been taken into custody after both of his parents were found dead in their home last night.
According to Mel, what happened inside that Brentwood house was not a single catastrophic moment. It was the final frame of a collapse that had been unfolding for 10 long years. A decade of warning signs, a decade of close calls, a decade of everyone who truly loved Rob watching the danger build and convincing themselves that tomorrow would be different. That love would be enough. That one more chance might finally turn things around. And here is the part that cuts deepest. Mel Brooks, a man the world knows for warmth and patience, a man who spent his entire life finding ways to make people laugh through the darkest chapters of human history, admitted that the inner circle knew. The people closest to Rob and Michelle, the ones who sat at their table and shared their holidays.
I've been lucky enough to spend time with them, and they were delightful people to be in a room with.
And watched their family from the inside. They knew Nick Reiner was unstable. They knew he was spiraling. They saw the volatility increase year after year. And yet nobody intervened hard enough. Nobody drew the line that needed to be drawn. Because they loved Rob too much to tell him the brutal truth. Because confronting the reality felt crueler than hoping it would somehow resolve itself. Mel made it clear that this is not a story about a monster appearing without warning. That narrative is too simple. It lets everyone off the hook. The picture Mel paints is far more uncomfortable than any headline can capture. It is a picture of parents whose love went unchecked. Parents who gave and gave and gave.
He saw their 32-year-old son, Nick, who looked great. He was sitting and talking with the family. They eat dinner together, old school, and a lot of love. Always a lot of love.
Believing that endless support was the same as protection. Parents who could not see that their compassion had slowly transformed into the very force that would destroy everything they had built. Mel said he watched it happen in slow motion. He watched Rob pour himself into saving a son who did not want to be saved.
I think Rob Reiner thought he was onto something at that point to help cure his son.
He watched Michelle stand beside her husband, exhausted but unwilling to give up. And he watched the family unit that once felt unbreakable begin to crack under a pressure that nobody was willing to name out loud. When Mel finished this part of his confession, he paused. The room was completely still. He looked down at his hands, still trembling, and said something that will stay with anyone who hears it. He said, "The hardest part is not the grief. Grief he understands. Grief he has carried before. The hardest part is knowing that he saw it coming. He saw the trajectory. He felt the danger in his bones, and he still could not stop it. That is the weight Mel Brooks carries now. Not just the loss of his best friend's son.
Actor and director Rob Reiner and his wife Michelle have died in a, quote, tragic event.
Not just the end of a dynasty he helped build, but the unbearable knowledge that the warning signs were screaming, and love made everyone too deaf to hear them in time. The shadow of legacy. The most shocking revelation Mel shared was not just about violence. It was about the pressure that built long before that final night. People look at the net worth, the movies, the Castle Rock legacy.
Reiner has given us so many of the most unforgettable movies and classic lines of the last 4 decades.
And assume money fixes everything. Mel made it clear that assumption could not be more wrong. Over the last 2 years, the situation did not just drain Rob and Michelle emotionally. It started cutting into them financially too. Not because they were anywhere near broke, but because the demands never stopped. Mel explained that the demands had become constant and aggressive. Nick was not simply asking for help anymore. He was demanding money as payback for things he believed were done to him growing up. Mel described how Nick framed these demands as reparations, twisting the family's own progressive values against them. He claimed his trauma justified millions in compensation, and he pushed that narrative hard. Mel said the manipulation was disturbingly clear-headed. This was not chaos. This was calculated.
He found the dynamic between Rob and his son, Nick, troubling. They were fighting, they were arguing with each other while they were on the set.
Rob would come to Mel shaken, tears in his eyes, showing him text messages that were cruel and vicious, packed with blame and resentment. Nick blamed Rob for everything. His addiction, his stalled career, his failures. The words were brutal, and somehow, the very next day, Rob would still step in. He would buy a car. He would pay for an apartment. He would fund another project. Mel called it the Hollywood disease. The belief that if you throw enough money, time, and resources at a problem, you can force a happy ending. Rob truly believed he could manage his son's recovery the same way he directed The Princess Bride. Set the scene right. Provide perfect support. Adjust the lighting. Rewrite the script. If everything was in place, the ending would change. But real life does not follow a screenplay. And Mel Brooks knows that better than almost anyone alive. Then Mel talked about something he called the shadow. Being born into a dynasty where the first 2 generations are legends is a crushing weight if you do not have the strength to carry it. Mel said Nick had talent. He had a voice. He had ideas. But what he wanted was the applause without the grind, the spotlight without the sweat. When the industry did not roll out the red carpet for him, Nick did not look inward. He looked for someone to blame, and that blame landed squarely on his father. He blamed Rob for being too big, too successful, too respected.
He was brilliant and kind, a man who made films of every genre to challenge himself as an artist.
He convinced himself that Rob's success had stolen his own happiness, that every closed door was his father's fault. Mel said it was a psychological fracture he had seen before in this town, but never one that turned this dark. Mel described watching Nick during a holiday gathering last year.
Attention is turning to Nick Reiner's behavior at a holiday gathering. According to NBC News, 2 sources confirmed the couple's son had been disruptive at a holiday party.
A small, quiet event meant to feel warm and familiar. But from the moment Nick arrived, the air felt stretched thin, like a wire pulled too far. Mel said he could not stop watching Nick, but more importantly, he watched Nick watching his father. It was not the look of a son. It was not affection or respect. Mel said it looked like a predator sizing up prey, cold and focused. Later that night, Mel pulled Rob aside. He grabbed his shoulders and told him with urgency that he needed to get Nick out of that house. He told Rob that his son did not look at him with love. He looked at him with ownership. But Rob pulled away, hurt. He told Mel that he sounded like the critics, that he did not know Nick like he did, that Nick was in pain. And that was when Mel broke down in the interview. He cried not just for Rob, but for the boy he once knew. The child who sat on the floor playing while Carl Reiner laughed nearby. The boy who grew into a man who could no longer tell the difference between love and enabling. The final phone call. The police timeline feels cold and mechanical. Time of death, entry points, injuries, locations, facts stripped of feeling. But Mel knows what happened in the hours leading up to that night because Rob called him.
There was rampant speculation that he was involved all night long last night.
It was late. Mel was already in bed when the phone rang. He admitted he hesitated, almost letting it go unanswered. Something felt wrong immediately. When he finally picked up, Rob's voice was barely above a whisper. This was not a casual call. He was not checking in. He was not joking. Mel said Rob was not saying goodbye directly, but it felt like goodbye all the same. Rob told him Nick was spiraling again. He was screaming about the will. He thought the family was cutting him out. Mel did not hesitate. He told Rob to leave immediately. Get in the car. Just drive. Come here. Mel said he begged him. And then came the sentence that turns this from a crime story into something ancient and tragic. Rob replied that he could not leave Michelle. She was in the room with Nick, trying to calm him down. If Rob left, Nick would turn everything on her. Rob Reiner stayed in that house knowing how dangerous the situation had become. He stayed because he refused to leave his wife alone at that moment. He walked back into that room to protect her, fully aware of what could happen. That was the last time Mel Brooks ever heard Rob's voice. Mel's anger turned sharp when he talked about the systems surrounding the family. He revealed there were therapists, doctors, and consultants involved, people being paid to advise, to guide, to protect. Instead, Mel said, they minimized the danger at every turn. According to Mel, these professionals told Rob and Michelle that tough love was outdated. They pushed radical acceptance instead. Mel did not sugarcoat it. He called them accomplices. He said they took Rob's money to tell him exactly what he wanted to hear, that Nick was simply sick, not dangerous. By doing that, they sanitized the threat. They gave clinical names to dangerous behavior, Mel said, his voice dropping low. They labeled it. They categorized it. They wrapped it up in soft medical language. They told him it was a disorder. They never told him it was a death sentence. That is why Mel is speaking now. He does not care about the trial. The courtroom is just procedure to him. The evidence is already there.
The 2015 National Medal of Arts to Mel Brooks for a lifetime of making the world laugh. As a writer, director, actor, and musician,
what Mel cares about is the truth of his friend's life and how it should be remembered. He does not want Rob Reiner reduced to the victim of random violence. He wants people to understand that Rob was already dying inside long before that night. Rob died of a broken heart before anything else happened. Mel wants the world to know that Rob did not run. He stayed. He sacrificed himself, trying to be the father he believed his son needed. Not the father who gives up. Not the father who walks away. The father who stands in the fire, hoping love is enough.
Rob Reiner's son, Nick Reiner, is now in custody after Rob Reiner and his wife were found dead.
And that is the real tragedy. His death did not save his son. It did not bring redemption. It only locked in his son's future forever. The weight of silence. Toward the end of the conversation, Mel went quiet. He looked around the room surrounded by memories. Blazing saddles. Young Frankenstein. Photos of his late wife Anne Bancroft staring back at him. He looked like a man marooned on an island made of the past. Mel said the hardest part now is not the anger. It is the silence. The phone does not ring anymore. There are no more Sunday dinners. And that silence, Mel said, is the loudest thing he has ever known. The link to Carl is gone. He whispered that he was the last one.
He met Mel Brooks. Their friendship over the decades became the stuff of comedy legend, with skits like The 2,000-Year-Old Man.
And that sentence alone will stay with him for the rest of his life. Mel briefly mentioned the funeral arrangements, which are being kept private and away from the spotlight. He said he plans to speak there, but people should not expect jokes. No humor, no deflection. He will not be doing what the world expects of Mel Brooks. He plans to stand up and tell the same truth he told the reporter, raw and unfiltered. He wants the industry to hear it directly without soft edges. He said he wants every powerful father and every wealthy mother in Hollywood to take a long, honest look at their troubled children and stop lying to themselves. He wants Rob's death to be a warning. A brutal signal flared in the dark.
It's been 15 days since the tragic double murder of Rob and Michelle Reiner.
You cannot love violence out of someone. You cannot fund it away. You cannot explain it away. As the journalist prepared to leave, Mel suddenly grabbed his arm. He was not done. He had one last thing he needed to say. Something that felt urgent, like it had been trapped inside him. Maybe it was to clear his conscience. Maybe it was a warning to anyone willing to listen. Mel went back to the enablers. He said Nick was not alone. He had friends, hangers-on, people who fed his delusions, who lived off Rob's money, who partied on it, who whispered poison into his ear and fueled his resentment. Mel said he wants those people exposed. And then he delivered the line that defines this entire story. Mel said Nick may have held the weapon, but plenty of people helped sharpen the blade. The cameras are gone. The headlines will fade. The courtroom doors will close. But Mel Brooks's confession refuses to disappear. His words hang in the air, heavier than any report, more piercing than any soundbite. This is not a story with neat endings or tidy resolutions. It is a story of love pushed too far, of loyalty tested and broken, of moments when silence becomes complicity. What we saw in Brentwood is only the beginning. Every family has its shadows, every legacy its hidden fractures. But some are more devastating because they involve people the world thought were untouchable. How many more truths are waiting, hidden behind closed doors, protected by fame, fear, or devotion? How many lives carry the weight of choices made out of love, but with consequences no one could foresee? Mel Brooks has spent a lifetime turning tragedy into laughter, absurdity into survival. But here, there is no comedy to soften the blow. Here, there is only truth, raw and unflinching. And it asks us something far larger than sympathy. What would you do if the people you loved most were on a path you could not stop? How far can love go before it becomes dangerous, before it destroys the very lives it meant to protect? This story is far from over, and the answers, when they come, will not be easy. They will challenge what you think you know about family, loyalty, and the human heart. They will make you question the moments you took for granted and the warnings you didn't hear. The silence has been broken, but the echoes are just beginning.